welcome back to another video feature of the Immersive Rules Handbook. I am among all the reclaimed housing items, and I want to do a feature today talking about the significance of reuse and put this in the context of Portland's eclecticism. So let me give you a tour. All right, so we'll begin our tour here through the ReBuilding Center in Portland, Oregon. And I have to say that initially this is one of the most curious spaces I've ever visited. And I mean that in terms of all spaces. I mean, it just in so many ways I think defies classification. I guess the basic way to describe this space, and you're looking at some really cool structures near the entrance area, but the best way to describe it is a space that focuses on household parts and items for building purposes, construction purposes, but ones that have been repurposed, donated, sold, etc. And you're seeing part of the, I guess, the lumberyard area, and you just see all the windows and doors there, which is a very cool sight. I mean, visually going to a place like this, I found like that in and of itself was really curious, not to even mention, of course, the purpose and the functionality. As we think about open source movements in architecture, in urbanism, and so forth, I think that the ReBuilding Center fulfills some of the missions in those approaches. And you just see here one little section with all the various doorknobs that you can purchase. And one of the things about the ReBuilding Center is they offer, you see some, it looks like theater seats, maybe from an old theater, but they offer items up to 80 or even 90% off of retail. And I'll show you, I think, a photo or some video where they compare prices. So there's like a really practical side of this in the sense that you could save money going here, purchasing your items, of course having to luck through everything, as opposed to going to one of the big box stores, home improvement stores, where everything is laid out meticulously, but it's more expensive. And I think there's something about the reuse side of this politically, as we'll talk about in the second half of the video, that really establishes it as something new, different, and unique. For me, as I'll talk about in my on-site video at the end of this video, there's also something very Portland about this place. I have to say, seeing the deconstruction services, we'll talk about that later, is kind of cool. Some of us think of deconstruction as a literary movement. Obviously, this is using it in a different sense. I will take you in a little bit through some of the aisles, but you see just what is available here. And it really is just an absolutely curious admixture of different appliances, cabinets, toilets, building items, lumber, and we're starting to walk through the aisles here. I'll just take you through, and there were a lot of people just walking around, looking at stuff, measuring things, having a list of items, and you could see for $20, just thinking about it economically, if that cabinet there happens to fit what you're looking for, or you can stain it or repurpose it, it's a pretty amazing deal. And as we'll get at in a little bit, the political side of this, I think, is really interesting, where we're talking about trying to get away from this movement of waste, and instead we're talking about repurposing and reuse. You can think about cultures like the Zabaleen in Egypt, the Coptic Christian group, who there was an entire documentary made about them called Garbage Dreams, and one of the things they do is repurpose items, not unlike these, within the city of Cairo and resell them. And so there are cultures out there that practice bricolage or repurposing in such a way that they're concerned with, I think, two things. A is not wasting as much as, say, we do in the United States and in Western cultures and societies. And B, the creativity side of things. There's the price comparison right there. And so they compare it with one of the big stores, and you can see it's really a dramatic difference. And just look at all these items here. These have all been organized and put in various categories, and there's pricing on it and so forth. But to go back to the idea of bricolage, bricolage essentially says you take an item and you repurpose it, or you combine different items together such that you make a new admixture, an amalgamation of different forms. In the case of new forms of open source urbanism and architecture, people are talking about really cheap solutions to creating items. And as an example, with like 3D printing or designs for very simple objects, maybe like a seat or something like that, you can imagine having this available for people, right, at a very low price. And this is a little bit different project, but I think there's some things that it shares in common, I would say, with that other movement out there, or those other movements out there that try to get people to think about opportunities for giving back to the community, opportunities for reusing as opposed to buying things new, and participating in the culture of obsolescence. But I have to say, this was like absolutely a first for me, seeing anything like this. And this is just all the various, I think these are light fixture parts in the lighting section. Looking above here, you see all the chandeliers. And some of these could be very simple, right? You just think, oh, that chandelier looks nice, I'll take that one. But what really interests me is maybe people who come in and deliberately try to create something new from bits and pieces that they find. This is pretty cool. This is a video screen that talks about education classes they do, tours, presentations, internships, volunteer services, donating materials to the local community. And here's an example of some of the projects out there. One of the things to note about the ReBuilding Center, it's part of a larger conglomerate of a 501 that does a lot of philanthropic things in the community. So here is the map. And this map, and it's called United Villages, by the way, so you can look them up, the nonprofit. But this shows you the layout. So there's the lumber yard, which had the windows and doors on it. We walked through a little bit of the appliances, the toilets, kind of on the right there in yellow. And then we also went into the lighting section as well. And so I'll take you through, I'm trying to remember if there's a little bit of video at the end, but essentially that video I had, I took you through most of the space. But so this shows you the layout. So like any home, big box home store, it has a layout. It's maybe smaller than some of those stores, but the opportunities here are quite amazing. So again, this is actually taken from their website. I wanted to show you this. They talk about volunteers, reducing the flow of materials into the waste stream, strengthening community's social vitality. I really like the fact that they're emphasizing values and social connections with the community. It shows you that it's, a bit of a contrast between other stores that just sell you items for home improvement. Creative reuse, discovering new purposes for materials. They do classes. They train you how to use tools. I think it's another really cool opportunity to teach people some new skills and to show them that they can do things. And of course, that's something stressed by the big box stores as well, but this is a much different take on that. And then here's the deconstruction. And if you actually click on the web page, this is a building in Portland that is slowly being not torn down, but repurposed. So taking the items and then deliberately taking them back here to the ReBuilding Center as a way of reusing them. So we're not putting new items into production, plastics, whatever, and creating carbon footprint issues. This shows you with a 2,500 square foot home some of the savings. Jobs, kilowatt hours of electricity, the CO2, that's a huge one, 24 tons. Waste materials, of course. And so this is a clear example of a project that has multiple potentials in terms of social, personal, economic transformation. So just a wonderful project. So and this is a little bit of that cool structure we looked at. In a second here, I'll take you to my on-site commentary talking about some of the same issues. But I really do hope that if you come to Portland, you check out the ReBuilding Center. My purpose was not to look for home ideas. My purpose was to find out what exactly this was, because I heard about it and I said, this is fascinating. I study cultural remaking. I study theme spaces. Talk about a mixture of those two worlds of my research together in one opportunity here. So just a wonderful site in Portland. Part of the dynamism of the city, and something that you should check out again if you're in Portland. So let me now shift to my on-site video to close out some of the commentary here on the ReBuilding Center. All right, I am just leaving the ReBuilding Center, and I wanted to check this out. If you know anything about Portland, certainly you're familiar with the fact that it's a city that's built on so much creativity and senses of the alternative and so forth. And so this, I think, fits in really well with the ethos that you note in the city. And just behind me here, there's a space where people can come and donate materials. And one of the things I want to show you with some of my interior video is just the extent to which they have this community mission and educational mission in terms of their projects. I mean, it's really quite revolutionary. And I mean, so many other cultures have this tradition of reuse and bricolage, yet in American society we focus on accumulation, obsolescence, waste, and then buying of new things. And so it's one of the issues, certainly you could say, that we suffer from culturally in the United States. Let's cross the street here. Again, that aesthetic, or that ethos rather, that focuses on reuse as opposed to buying new things, I think is just so key. And when you think about the cultural values of American society, they're at odds with what's going on there. And so that's a real problem, obviously, when you think about it as a cultural issue. And so one of the things I would say is certainly that in our look today at the ReBuilding store, it definitely fits in with the aesthetic of Portland. If you think about what Portland's all about, the sense of the alternative, the sense of the eclectic, and the reuse, I think, really fits in if you think about the sensibility that you experience while you're in Portland. So a lot to reflect on here with the many eclectic venues in the city. Hope you enjoyed the video feature today here at the ReBuilding store here in Portland, Oregon. Please come back for additional video features of the Immersive World's Handbook.